Generation GST reforms have taken effect, and it is a big boost for daily essentials as well as household budgets. Questions still remain, and many still are seeking some clarity. Now, to decode all of this, I'm joined by senior expert Ajay Bagga. I'm also joined by business economist Sanchita Mukherji. Thank you both for your time. The big questions, really, that we have are as follows, and Sanchita, I'll come to you first. The first one being, how significant is the real gain for consumers?
We would consider this to be very, very significant indeed. This was a historic and a landmark reform in terms of lowering the GST rate, as we see it, as business economists, as people in the capital markets, because India has been struggling with the consumption story of late. Last couple of years, there's been, if one were to see the journey post COVID, then there was a huge push by the government, by the fiscal in terms of infrastructure, development, electricity reforms, all of that. But in the face of overall global slowdown, geopolitical tensions, all of that, there has been a bit of a lag in the consumption story. And given that the markets are very elevated in terms of valuations, everything was hinging on the urban consumption offtake and the rural consumption offtake, right? So right now, with the GST reforms coming up and most of the products getting pushed to lower rates, barring a few luxury products. Again, the few luxury products don't really move the needle in an economy like ours, but barring those few, majority of the products have come into lower pricing, and there is a non-profit motive for governments, for the companies. So the companies have to give these kind of pricing to the end consumer. So markets are really looking forward. In fact, entire corporate India is really looking forward to the consumption taking off big time. And right now we are on the verge of a massive festive season. If one were to look at the earnings in the listed space, last earnings actually have been quite on the surprise, have been on the upside. Hence, there is a lot of expectation that in this festive season, sales volumes, turnover will actually benefit massively because of this GST reform. Now, going forward, we also expect more reforms to follow suit, because this is a perfect opportunity in the face of geopolitical storm for India to push forward with further reforms, which will further aid the domestic economy, especially on the consumption side.
That's right. The big boost for domestic consumption. Many saying this was the need of the hour. Ajay Bagga, do you agree? And many also saying that, look, but will lower prices stay? Are lower prices really here to stay? And what does this mean for the likes of car manufacturers and dealers who are somewhere saying it's a tricky transition? So, your thoughts on this?
The lower prices are here to stay. The inflation impact will rise to about 1% over a year. Immediately, about a 20-30 basis point impact on the consumer inflation. A lot of the food items go to 0% or 5%. Biscuit companies, for example, are seeing a clear 10 to 12% benefit. Toothpaste makers are getting a 13% benefit. If I was analyzing a lot of the FMCG companies, even on a weighted average, they are getting a 8% boost. And the government is very closely monitoring it, that the entire pass-through happens for consumers. So that benefit is going to flow through, and these price reduction should stay.
Price reductions should stay. So, for all those having those concerns about whether this is just a short term festive bonanza, well, at the moment, experts believe that these prices are here to stay. Remember, the Prime Minister also said this is a big push towards a more self reliant India, and how we all must be looking towards Swadeshi products a lot more. So that really is, of course, another a thought process that is coming in. But Sanchita, there are questions that, are there fiscal pressures that are limiting the ability to support informal workers or enterprises? Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are very simple. I think so far, if one were to see the conduct in the fiscal responsibility of the government, has been quite immense, especially in a growth emerging economy like ours. The fiscal pressures have always been there, but I think the roadmap post COVID has been very, very responsible in terms of the fiscal management. Also, if one were to see, given the added impetus, and every time we see a slew of reforms, what happens that initial knee-jerk pressures on the fiscal does happen, but what happens in the medium to long term is when the lowest common denominator of the economy benefits, it is also a net positive to the fiscal situation itself, right? For example, clearly the tax collections, right? If one were to see even GST, when a couple of times when the reforms happened previously, also there were knee-jerk reactions in terms of this whole thing that happens in terms of giving back to the states, how it adds up. Will there be a short-term loss? All of that. These questions do happen. These are teething problems. But however, what we do witness is in the longer term, everybody wins. It's a win-win situation because the tax collections have been at an all-time high. If one were to see the indirect direct tax collections, right, it has only aided. And if you're giving out more money to the consumer to consume, I mean, this is the largest consuming economy of the world, 1.4 billion people consuming. So the net momentum that comes into the economy only adds on to your GDP and to your government coffers. So I do not see a problem in that way. And I think fiscally, the government can go ahead and address that in the next budget by sticking to the divestment targets that will ramp up the situation fiscally for the government of India if one were to look at it in that manner.
Right, Ajay Bagga, do you agree? Are there fiscal pressures that are limiting the ability to support informal workers and enterprises then?
No, fiscal pressures the government has managed quite well, and my thinking is that these consumption tax cuts normally they lead to higher revenues because there's more tax compliance. There'll be more formalization, especially on foodstuffs. Affordability you're increasing, so the consumer will move up the chain to formal foodstuffs, and so you will see better tax compliance, better tax revenues, and that will expand the fiscal ability of the government. Overall, if you see over the last 5 years, GST collections have moved from 11 lakh crores to 22 lakh crores. So that's showing that compliance has gone up along with the growth. And this kind of a boost, it's a big stimulus to growth, and this will lead to consumption growth, better tax revenues. So I would really agree that you will see record tax revenues once more.
Right, a big boost to growth, to revenues, and of course, greater clarity on the taxation front. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts and for answering the big questions on GST 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.